Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Inner Sanctum YouTube channel. I'm your host, Ari Stamatakos, and today we're going to be introducing a new series on the YouTube channel called Player Spotlight. Now, what this series will entail is that we're going to be looking through some various Socceroos players who haven't potentially been capped by the Socceroos yet, or are on the fringes of the Socceroos squad, or even have already made their debut. And we're going to be looking at their prospects for the World Cup in November and where they sit in Graham Arnold's plans. Now, first up, we're going to go with Gianni Stensness, who has already made his debut for the Socceroos, and we'll touch on that a little bit later on. But he's a 23-year-old right-footed, right-sided central defender. Now, that already, considering the issues that the Socceroos had with the lack of centre-halves in the previous international break, obviously with Trent Sainsbury's uncertainty around whether he'd be fit, this just adds more layers of depth to the squad, and he gives him a big opportunity to impress. He can also play as a holding midfielder and a central midfielder, as well as being able to play in a back three or a back four. Now, those three assets already, or those four assets even, just show that he's obviously very versatile, but it also gives him that valuability in terms of he can play in a multitude of positions, multitude of systems, and he'll be a player that is very coachable. He can very fluid, very tactically able to change very quickly, and his adaptability is brilliant. He's a former Wellington Phoenix and Central Coast Mariners player, so he's been used to the football in Australia. He's obviously used to the system, to the style, and would obviously know a couple of Socceroos players who have come from the A-League. He did represent New Zealand at the under-23s level, but switched allegiances to the Socceroos not that long ago. He currently plays for Viking FK in the Norwegian First Division, and they currently sit third place on the ladder. Some of the key wins this season include wins over Molde FK and Bodø Glimt, two premier sides in the Norwegian First Division, and he's played a crucial role in their pretty good start to the season so far. He stands at 6'1" tall, so while that's not potentially the best physical presence that you want from a defensive-minded player and a central defender in particular, he makes up for that in other areas of his games, which we'll touch on just now. Now, one of the key aspects of Stensness' game is that he's really the modern-day centre-half. While he's not, like I said, he's only 6'1", so while he's not the best physical presence and while he's not overly strong in a tackle, he does make up for it when in possession and can really be the first line of attack for whatever club he plays in. His stats so far this season, he has 15.14 accurate passes in the opposition's final third per 90 this season. So already we can say that he's very, very adept at being higher up the pitch and really making an impact in the final third. Furthermore, he has 77.5 passes per 90, the most in his team. So right there we can say that he's been given the trust and he's been given the responsibility of being that ball-playing centre-back that can really drive the team forward, recycle possession, dictate the tempo, and also make that final third pass, breaking in between the lines should it be needed. Despite not being strong in attack, and if you bring up his average positions right here, this is his heat map for the season, so credit to SofaScores for it. We can see that while he does most of his work behind the halfway line and potentially maybe 50 yards out from his own goal, he is very adept at being on the halfway line should the Socceroos or should whatever team he plays for be that dominant team, dominating possession and really having the line share in terms of dictating tempo and being the dominant team. While he's not strong in the tackle, he makes up for it in more football IQ, as seen with him averaging 1.8 interceptions per 90 and 2.6 clearances per 90 as well. So while those defensive stats are not out of this world, and while they're not potentially as good as they can be, this does show that he's not just a central midfielder playing as a centre back. He does have that defensive-minded nature about him and can do some serious damage in terms of shutting out a striker. Like I said at the top of the show, he has already made his debut for the Socceroos, and those were against Japan and Saudi Arabia earlier on in March. Now, these games, high pressure, the Socceroos had to win at that time, and I think if you look at the Japan game first, it is very unfair to judge him on that game, in my opinion. He played as a central midfielder alongside Connor Metcalfe in that game. So, granted, he was playing slightly deeper and slightly more defensive-minded, which suits his game style. However, he hadn't played as a central midfielder at all for his club in the months prior to that game, and hasn't played it in the months since. Now, I don't necessarily understand what Graham Arnold was going for tactically wise there, but I understand the fact that he was playing slightly deeper to cover that maybe more advanced kind of Metcalfe who would push on into those advanced positions, and having him able to drop into that centre-back position, almost transition to a back five, does suit his game to an extent. However, I don't think it is fair to judge him on a game in a position where he played which isn't his natural position. However, he played against Saudi Arabia a couple of days after, and he was played as a central defender. Now, if we bring up his average positions, or sorry, his heat map from that game, you can see that it is not where he wants to play at all. If we just quickly show you his heat map for his club side in Norway compared to his heat map in that game, it is very, very different. He's almost playing as a right fullback, as you can see. He's not pushing up along the halfway line. He isn't having an impact on the game that he can. He's much better playing in a system which dominates the ball, dominates possession, and the Socceroos really didn't have that in that game. They were happy to concede possession, try hit Saudi Arabia on the counter attack, and that doesn't really suit Stensness' game style at all. However, these two games, while they weren't the best, I do still think that he has a very solid future for the Socceroos, and let's dissect that a little bit right now. Now, how does Stensness fit into the future of the Socceroos? Well, my mind straight away goes to options. He can play in a back four, he can play in a back three, he can play in a double pivot as a central midfielder, can play as a defensive midfielder, and can play more naturally as a centre half, both outside and as a central centre half. Now, this will hold him in great stead. That positional fluidity and tactical fluidity that modern football now requires will hold him in great stead for whoever is the Socceroos coach whenever he plays. Now, more specifically, I do think he's the perfect long-term partner to Harry Souttar. Now, Harry Souttar obviously had that long-term injury, so he hasn't really played a lot for the Socceroos in recent times. However, when he does get reintroduced back into the squad, I do feel that once Trent Sainsbury's career comes to an end, that these two can really forge a solid partnership for the national team because they complement each other to perfection. You have Souttar, who is that more industrious centre-half. He has the physical presence and can really shut a striker out of the game, whereas you have Stensness, who's that more languid, fluid, ball-playing centre-half, and their game styles complement each other brilliantly. So that is probably his best position going forward for the Socceroos. And another asset of his that helps him as well is that he's already playing in Europe. Now, that is definitely not something to be underestimated, the fact that he's already playing at the highest level in Europe. Granted, Norway isn't the Premier League, but he's still a very, very solid level, and the international game is played very similar to how it's played in Europe. So I think that will hold him in great stead coming into his when he's maturing and coming into his latter stages of his career. So yes, thank you all very much for watching. That is the first episode of Player Spotlight through Gianni Stensness. Now leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Let us know where he can be maybe used from Graham Arnold's perspective in the future, whether or not he has a place in the World Cup, and his future as a Socceroo. Just let us know your thoughts, and let us know your thoughts about other players you want to see. Thank you all very much for watching, and goodbye.